The Quest X-15 is a sport-scale model of the famous rocket-powered research plane. It is powered by regular 18mm motors and is a very good flyer in windy weather. I chose to paint mine blue instead of the historically accurate black. The X-15 is 22 inches tip to tail, 35mm in diameter, with a 6-inch wingspan. My particular model weighs just over 100 grams, or 3.6 ounces. It uses a 14-inch parachute, and I added a Nomex sheet since its wide tube demands a lot of wadding. This rocket was completed in September 2011. October 2nd of 2011 was its first flight. It was a breezy, cold, and drizzly day. I launched it at a 15-degree angle into the wind, but it surprised me by flying straight up in spite of the winds. It appeared to reach about 100 feet on a B62 motor. The delay was right, and even though the Quest-supplied shock cord seemed plenty long, the nose cone recoiled and took a big bite out of the leading edge of the wing before I had time to even photograph her. November 6th, I flew it again, also in breezy weather. The flight went very well, and the C6 motor proved best for this model. I forgot I had a Nomex cloth in the tube and packed a lot of wadding above that, discovering the Nomex cloth when I retrieved the model. December 4th, another 10-mile-per-hour wind day. I used another C6-3 motor and carried an altimeter this time. Again, it shrugged off the winds, flew straight up, reached 89 miles per hour, and peaked at 437 feet, much higher than I estimated for the C6 motor. A good parachute brought it back at 12 miles per hour. In 2012, I flew it again on February 5th.
3, 2, 1.
This time, it was windy again, and I tested a B62 motor again. It accelerated to 48 miles per hour and reached an apogee of 138 feet. Despite the frigid weather, I got a full parachute and a slow descent at 7 miles per hour. The wide body tube allowed me to pack the chute loosely. April 1st, 2012.
Go ahead. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Another day that was a bit windy and quite gusty. You may have noticed I always call on this rocket in windy weather. Today it wavered a bit, but continued straight up again, as though a pilot was on board. Unusually, it then turned downwind instead of upwind, still moving fast as a gust carried it far away. The parachute opened well, but did not open fully, and it came back at a fast 17 miles per hour.
Oh boy.
Still, it landed without damage, several hundred yards downwind. It reached 87 miles per hour and 336 feet of altitude. June 10th of 2012. At last, a calm day.
3, 2, 1, launch!
With the B-64, it accelerated rapidly to a speed of 56 miles per hour, but with a delay charge a full second short, it opened at 149 feet and started falling with the parachute still in the tube. After what seemed like an eternity, the parachute was pulled out by the turbulence and then descended at 12 miles per hour safely.
Launch! Launch!
On this day, I flew another test flight in the calm air with the preferred C65 motor. Acceleration was impressive, and the model broke 100 miles per hour, peaking at 104, its all-time record speed. The apogee was 346 feet. A good parachute ended this flight with a slow 9-mile-per-hour descent. Later that month, June 30th, 2012, I flew it again, this time in erratic, gusty winds. but I knew the X-15 could handle it and chose a C-6-3. It rocked and wiggled on its way up, but continued a rail-straight path up. It reached a speed of 91 miles per hour and an apogee of 391 feet. It could have easily used a C-6-5, even in a strong wind. I got an odd parachute at first, apparently tangled with the Nomex, but eventually it straightened out and came back at 9 miles per hour for yet another successful flight. My test flights were all carrying an altimeter 2 clipped to the nose cone, a risky situation for the altimeter. My Iris project enclosed the electronic device in a padded compartment. This is what the addition appeared like. I then added white checkers to enhance the styling. Before its next flight, I modified it with a 3-inch Iris payload bay. Because of all the data I had for this rocket already, it would be a good way to judge the performance effect of the added payload length and weight. August 11th, 2012. The X-15 flew its first Iris test flight. It was a bit windy and gusty, and with the new payload section, I did not know how she would fly. A good parachute brought it back at 9 miles per hour. It reached an apogee of about 251 feet, about 50 to 100 feet lower than before. And it reached 73 miles per hour, about 10 miles per hour slower than before. Although the performance numbers were off by a significant amount, it was still a good flight. November 4th, 2012. The X-15 was now 1 year old.
4, 3, 2, 1.
There were stiff 14-mile-per-hour winds. I chose a B-6-4 to keep it from going too far up and away. I neglected to consider its lackluster performance on B-6 motors, though, and chose a longer delaying B-6-4. I should have used a 2. It struggled with the winds again, but still went straight up, reaching only 43 miles per hour. Apogee was at 99 feet. With the long delay, it continued down, almost as fast as going up, going about 22 miles per hour with no ejection yet. A mere fraction of a second, at about 5 feet above ground, the ejection finally came. There was no time for the parachute to slow it down. In only 5.5 seconds after liftoff, the body tube drove itself into the ground, taking about a 1-inch core sample. Amazingly, the body tube suffered only cosmetic damage. I dodged the bullet. Still, it was an ugly flight that reminded me to not be so casual selecting a motor when it is windy. December 2nd, 2012. Another flight for this busy bird. The wind was a moderate 7 miles per hour with no gust, but still I chose the C-6-3 after the previous near-disaster flight. For the first time ever, this rocket curved far upwind, maybe 800 feet across, with a top speed of 63 miles per hour. It only made it to 199 feet. The stiff Quest parachute did its job, though, and the rocket returned at 10 miles per hour while drifting in the wind back to the launch area, saving me a long walk. One more flight, the last of the day and the last for 2012. I sent the X-15 up with another C-6-3 motor. It reached 66 miles per hour, nowhere near the 100-plus speed I obtained from an earlier C-6-3 flight. It turned into the wind again, to the south, and the apogee was only 258 feet. This time, the slow 10-mile-per-hour descent let the rocket drift not back north, but to the west. March 10th, 2013. After the core sample wreck 4 months ago, I again attempted the flight with a B6 motor, using a 2 delay this time. It was the lowest acceleration B6 ever for this rocket, reaching only 42 miles per hour. An ejection at 89 feet was followed by a 95-foot apogee, and then a good parachute and descent at 10 miles per hour. It took less than 10 seconds and landed within 50 feet of the launch pad. Overall, I discovered the additional Iris payload section was affecting the performance in speed, altitude, and wind immunity. I then devised a method to store the altimeter in the more safe, hollow, hard plastic nose cone. At this time, I modified the X-15, removing the payload compartment and installing the altimeter in a special compartment installed into the nose cone. This saves both weight and length of the body tube, reduces drag, and restores the original stability margin of this rocket. Hopefully, it will also restore the excellent wind performance of this rocket. June 30th, 2013. This launch was a unique test flight. I was about to compete in a 30-second duration contest. The X-15 without the payload section and the original Quest parachute was my only rocket that gave near perfect 30-second flight times. My data does not show whether the 3 or the 5-second delay would be best, so on a hunch, I would fly a single test flight with the C-65 and see whether I should use the 3 or the 5 for the contest flight. Also, this was the first test flight of the new altimeter installation in the nose cone. The flight went as well as possible, reaching 84 miles per hour and 376 feet. A good chute and a 9 mile per hour descent gave me a 32-second flight, which should be close enough to win first place. The last 3 C-65 flights were 30.1, 31.7, and 32 seconds, a good consistent average. Now it was time for the contest flight with another C-65. There could only be one single flight per contestant, so this had to be perfect. This flight hit 81 miles per hour, only 3 slower than the previous test flight. The coast time was the same at 3.7 seconds. It only reached an apogee of 335 feet, 41 less than before, so I hoped that the chute would open a bit quicker this time to compensate. This particular motor delayed for 4.8 seconds compared to the last at 5.2 seconds, which helped even out the difference. Now, ejection was only 32 feet lower than before, and it was still on track for first place. The parachute hit the wind and became tangled and twisted into the shock cord elastic. Instead of falling at 8 or 9 miles per hour, it fell at 15 miles per hour. The flight was over in 20.4 seconds. My chance of winning was lost with the twisting parachute. On the bright side, there was no damage to this rocket. August 14th, 2013. I was trying out a new field this morning, but while setting up, the wind picked up. I didn't need to worry with the X-15. After ignition, it began to turn into the stiff breeze about 30 degrees or so. It reached a speed of 50 miles per hour and slowed as it coasted to turn completely into the wind. It reached its apogee of 99 feet, then dropped 17 feet before ejection at 82 feet. A quick parachute appeared, and a descent followed at 9 miles per hour. Flight time was a mere 10 seconds. Although this flight went fine, it did show that it was just too windy for any other higher-flying rockets today. This was the last X-15 flight for the year, and I have not flown it since then. Overall, this rocket flew 16 flights in its short 2-year life. It had sped as fast as 104 miles per hour and reached an altitude of 437 feet above ground. I saw a liftoff acceleration of 8.8 Gs, and it fell at a fast 22 miles per hour, taking a 1-inch core sample. It has always survived and has always been the #1 choice to fly in strong winds. That is the story of the X-15, but there is much more flying for this rocket in the future.